Disclaimer: the names in this story are not real. For privacy reasons, I've changed them, but everything I describe here is true to what happened in my life. My name is Ava, and this is my story. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would one day sit down and type this out for strangers on the internet. I used to think I had a good marriage. Henry, my husband, was steady, dependable, and for years I thought we were building the kind of life most women dream of. We had a comfortable home, a teenage son, and to the outside world, we looked like a strong family. But under that surface, cracks had been forming for a long time. I want to say up front, I know what I did was wrong. I'm not here to defend myself or make excuses. But I want to explain how it happened, how I let it go so far, and how everything blew up in ways I never could have imagined. Henry is a lecturer, the kind of man who is serious about his work, respected by his students, and admired in our community. He's not flashy, not the kind of guy who sweeps you off your feet with constant romance, but he's stable. The thing is, after more than a decade of marriage, that stability started to feel like suffocation. Our days became predictable, our conversations dry, our intimacy almost non-existent. I began to feel invisible. And then there was Daniel. That's not his real name either, but he was a colleague of mine at the school where I worked. Daniel was charismatic, younger than Henry, and he knew exactly how to make a woman feel seen. At first, it was innocent, sharing jokes in the staff room, venting about workloads, the kind of camaraderie that doesn't feel like danger. But slowly it shifted. He would compliment me on things Henry never noticed anymore. My new dress, the way I had my hair done, even the tone of my voice when I explained something in class. It had been years since a man looked at me like that. I should have walked away, but instead, I soaked it in. I told myself it was harmless. Just attention. Just a bit of fun. One late evening, when we stayed behind after school to finish grading, the line was finally crossed. Daniel leaned too close, and instead of pulling back, I let it happen. The kiss wasn't planned, but the moment our lips touched, I knew I was in trouble. My whole body lit up with something I hadn't felt in years. Desire. Excitement. A rush of adrenaline that made me forget, just for a second, that I was a wife and a mother. That kiss turned into texts turned into late-night calls, and soon, we were sneaking around like reckless teenagers. We met in his car, in cheap motels, sometimes even at my place when I knew Henry was at work. Every time, I told myself it would be the last. Every time, I promised I would stop. But the more I tried to end it, the deeper I fell. For months, I lived this double life. At home, I cooked dinner, folded laundry, kissed my son goodnight. At work, I was the professional teacher. But beneath it all, I was Ava, the woman who had come alive again because of Daniel. The secrecy, the stolen touches, the risk, it all became addictive. Henry had no idea. He was so focused on his lectures, on his students, on paying bills, that he never questioned where my energy went. He trusted me completely, and I betrayed him in the worst way. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. And mine came crashing down on me in the most humiliating way possible. It happened one afternoon when Daniel came over to my rented apartment. My son was away with friends, and Henry was supposed to be at the college. We thought we had time. But Henry, suspicious or just unlucky, came home early. The moment I heard the door unlock, my heart dropped into my stomach. Daniel and I scrambled, but there was no hiding what was happening. Henry walked in and saw everything. I don't think I'll ever forget the look on his face. Shock, betrayal, rage, all at once. He didn't scream right away. He just stood there, frozen, like he was trying to process that the woman he had trusted for years, the mother of his child, had someone else in their bed. And then he snapped. Henry didn't just confront us privately. He pulled Daniel out, shouting loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He grabbed my arm, cursed me, and before I knew it, people were outside watching. The humiliation was unbearable. Henry made Daniel strip down to his underwear, forced him into the street, and paraded him around. I stood there, horrified, ashamed, unable to stop it. Phones came out. Videos were recorded. In a matter of hours, my private shame became public gossip. I can still hear the whispers. I can still see the faces of people recording, laughing, judging. Henry's rage wasn't just at Daniel, it was at me too. He shoved me, screamed at me, called me names I'll never forget. And in that moment, everything I thought I had under control came crashing down. I wasn't just a wife who cheated. I became the spectacle of our community, the woman everyone would talk about. That night, I sat alone in the dark, shaking, replaying everything in my mind. The affair, the lies, the thrill, the destruction. How had I gone from craving attention to having my entire life torn apart? How had I let myself go so far? And yet, even after everything, a part of me still thought about Daniel. The addiction hadn't died. The mess had only just begun. The night after Henry exposed me in front of everyone felt like the longest of my life. I sat alone in our bedroom, shaking, while Henry slammed doors and made phone calls in the other room. My phone buzzed endlessly, friends, coworkers, even parents from the school messaging me. Some were curious, some were cruel, and a few were oddly sympathetic. But it didn't matter. My humiliation was now permanent. Those videos of Daniel being dragged half-naked through the street were already online, and in every clip, my face could be seen, crying, panicked, begging Henry to stop. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Henry's face when he walked in on us. That look will haunt me forever. And every time I opened my phone, more messages poured in. Gossip spreads fast, but scandal spreads faster. I wanted to shut it all off, but I couldn't look away from the wreckage I had caused. The next morning, Henry didn't speak to me. He just left. No goodbye, no explanation. I didn't even know if he was going to work or straight to a lawyer. I sat at the kitchen table with cold coffee in my hands, staring at the wall, wondering if this was it, if my marriage, my reputation, my entire life as I knew it was officially over. And then came Daniel's call. He was shaken, furious, and embarrassed. "Ava, what the hell was that?" He paraded me like an animal. "My career is ruined." Everyone saw. His voice was harsh, but beneath it I could hear fear. He had always been the confident one, the man who made me feel alive, but now he was just as broken as I was. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't think." "You didn't think?" "Ava, my family saw that video. My parents called me. My brother won't even answer my texts. Do you know what you've done to me?" His words cut deep. For months, Daniel and I had been reckless, feeding off the thrill, pretending we were in control. But the truth was clear now. We weren't in control of anything. We were exposed, shamed, and cornered. At school, I couldn't even show my face. Rumors spread through the staff like wildfire. Some of the other teachers avoided me completely, while others looked at me with thinly veiled judgment. A few whispered words of support, but their pity only made me feel smaller. Students giggled when I passed. Some even had the audacity to mention Daniel's name in the hallways. I went home in tears more than once, wondering if I'd even have a job by the end of the month. At home, Henry's silence was worse than his rage. He refused to sleep in the same bed, refused to eat with me, refused to even acknowledge my presence unless it was absolutely necessary. When he looked at me, it was like I was a stranger. No, worse than a stranger. I was the enemy who had destroyed his trust. Our son barely spoke to me either. I could see the confusion and hurt in his eyes, but he didn't know how to process it, so he avoided me. I thought about leaving, packing up and disappearing to escape the humiliation. But where would I go? My family was too far away, and even if I left, the videos would still exist. I couldn't outrun this. It would follow me forever. And yet, despite everything, I still felt drawn to Daniel. My brain screamed that he was toxic now, that he was part of my downfall, but my heart and body betrayed me. The addiction hadn't left. I still craved him. We still texted, still met in secret, though far less often. We were careful, paranoid even, but neither of us could walk away completely. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was lust. Maybe it was denial. But the fire was still there, even as it burned everything else to ash. Henry must have known. He was too smart not to. I'd catch him watching me sometimes, his eyes sharp, like he was waiting for me to slip up again. He didn't yell. He didn't confront me. He just waited. That was worse than any fight. We were living in a Cold War, one where I didn't know when or how he'd strike back. Weeks passed, and the tension in the house grew unbearable. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my guilt, my fear, and my longing for something I couldn't let go of. Daniel begged me to leave Henry, to move in with him, to start over. He said Henry would never forgive me, that I was wasting my time pretending this marriage could be salvaged. But I couldn't just throw away years of my life, my family, my home. And deep down, I wasn't sure Daniel was worth it.
He was charming, yes.
He made me feel alive, yes. But when I looked at him now, I also saw the humiliation, the shame, the destruction. Was that love? Or was it just a prison I had built for myself? The breaking point came one evening when Henry finally spoke. He walked into the living room where I was curled up on the couch and said, very calmly, "I've spoken to a lawyer." My heart stopped. What do you mean? He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look angry anymore. He just looked tired. "I'm filing for divorce. You'll hear from them soon." It felt like the floor gave way beneath me.
Divorce.
The word I had dreaded, the word that meant there was no going back. My family was shattered. My marriage was officially dead. I wanted to beg him to reconsider, to tell him I'd change, to promise that I'd end it with Daniel for good. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw there was no point. The love was gone. The trust was gone. All that remained was resentment and exhaustion. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. And still, even in the middle of my grief, part of me picked up the phone and texted Daniel. Because I didn't know how to be alone anymore. Because I didn't know how to live with the silence Henry left behind. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't the end of my story. Things were about to get worse, far worse, before they ever got better. After Henry told me he was filing for divorce, I thought I had hit rock bottom. I imagined the papers arriving, the division of assets, the custody discussions for our son, and the whispers from everyone who already knew too much about my humiliation. But I was wrong. Rock bottom still had layers to fall through, and I was about to crash through all of them. Daniel became my escape.
My lifeline.
My guilty pleasure that had turned into my only comfort. He would text me at all hours. "Don't let him break you. We'll get through this together. Leave him, Ava. You don't need him anymore." And I clung to those words like a drowning woman clutching driftwood. Because Henry had become a ghost in our home, moving silently, avoiding me except for curt exchanges about bills or our son. His silence was unbearable.
Daniel at least still wanted me.
But the more time I spent with Daniel after the fallout, the more cracks I started to see. He wasn't the same confident man who had swept me into this mess. He was bitter, paranoid, angry. He resented Henry, resented the humiliation, resented even me sometimes. "If you had been more careful, this never would have happened," he snapped once, and it stung more than I cared to admit. Still, I kept going back. Because I didn't know who I was without him anymore. Every stolen night at his apartment, every desperate kiss, every whispered promise, it was all I had left. The more Henry pulled away, the more I ran to Daniel. It was toxic, and I knew it, but addiction doesn't care about reason. Meanwhile, Henry wasn't just silent, he was strategic. I began to notice things missing from the house. Documents. Files. One night, I walked past his study and saw him on the phone, speaking in a low, measured voice I hadn't heard before. Words like evidence, custody, and property floated out of the room. My stomach turned cold. Henry wasn't just divorcing me. He was planning to strip me of everything. The divorce papers arrived, and they were brutal. Henry wanted the house. He wanted full custody of our son. He wanted financial compensation for emotional damages. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers with trembling hands, realizing just how unprepared I was for this war. My affair hadn't just broken my marriage, it had armed Henry with enough ammunition to destroy me legally, too. I called Daniel, panicked. "He's going to take everything, Daniel. He wants full custody. He's painting me like some unfit mother, like I'm a monster. Daniel sighed heavily. Ava, maybe you should just let him have what he wants. Start fresh with me. Forget about the house, the custody battles, all of it. Just walk away. His words made me freeze. Forget about custody? Forget about my son? Was he serious? I realized in that moment that while Daniel had been my escape, he was never really in this for me, not fully. He wanted me, yes, but not the baggage of my family, my responsibilities, my mistakes. He wanted the thrill, not the wreckage. I didn't say anything to him then, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Was I destroying myself for a man who wouldn't stand by me when it truly mattered? At school, things got worse. Parents began complaining about me teaching their kids. A few mothers even demanded that I be removed. The administration called me in and, while they didn't fire me outright, they strongly suggested I take a leave of absence. That was just a polite way of saying, go away before we're forced to make it official. So I lost my job, my reputation, and possibly my marriage and son, all while clinging to an affair that was starting to show its ugly, hollow core. Nights with Daniel became filled with arguments as much as passion. He drank more, lashed out more. Once, he even grabbed my arm too hard during a fight, and for the first time, I felt afraid of him. I wanted to run back to Henry, to beg for forgiveness, to plead for just one more chance. But Henry wasn't the same man anymore. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, he just dismantled me piece by piece with quiet, calculated moves. Every lawyer meeting, every court paper, every cold stare was another nail in the coffin of the life I had destroyed. One night, after another fight with Daniel, I sat alone in my car and cried until my chest hurt. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. My makeup was smeared, my eyes swollen, my face drawn with stress and regret. I whispered to myself, "What have you done? Who have you become?" Henry must have known how far I was unraveling, because that week he finally confronted me, not with shouting, but with chilling calm. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen, his voice steady. "You're going to lose everything, Ava. The house.
Custody. Your job is already gone. And Daniel?
He won't save you. He'll walk away when it gets too hard. Then you'll have nothing." His words weren't just predictions, they were prophecies. Because deep down I knew he was right. The real breaking point came when my son finally spoke up. He had been quiet, avoiding me, pretending I didn't exist. But one night, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Why did you do it, Mom? Why did you ruin everything?" I had no answer. Tears streamed down my face, but he just shook his head and walked away. That was when I realized the true cost of my choices wasn't just my marriage or my reputation, it was my child's trust. And that hurt more than anything else ever could. But the worst was yet to come. Because Henry wasn't finished. He was still planning, still waiting, and I could feel the storm gathering just beyond the horizon. And when it hit, it would destroy what little I had left. By the time the divorce hearing started, I was already a shell of myself. I walked into the courthouse with shaky hands, my lawyer whispering strategies in my ear, while Henry stood tall on the other side, calm and composed, as though he'd already won. His confidence made me sick because deep down I knew he had every reason to feel that way. He wasn't just divorcing me, he was dismantling me. The evidence was stacked against me. Photos, text messages, witness statements from neighbors who had seen Henry drag Daniel through the street. Even the viral videos were presented, humiliating me all over again. My lawyer tried to argue that Henry's behavior was abusive, that what he did to Daniel was unlawful, but it didn't matter. The affair overshadowed everything. The judge looked at me like I was the villain, and maybe I was. The custody battle was the worst part. Henry painted me as reckless, unstable, unfit. And though I fought desperately to keep shared custody of our son, I could see in my child's eyes that he didn't want to be with me. The betrayal had broken something in him too. He clung to Henry, avoided my touch, and when the judge asked him directly, he said he wanted to live with his father. Hearing that felt like someone had ripped my heart out with their bare hands. I will never forget the way my son looked at me, confused, hurt, disappointed. I had failed him in every way that mattered. In the end, Henry won custody. I was granted visitation, but even that felt like pity. The house was awarded to Henry. The financial settlement left me scrambling. Overnight, the life I had built crumbled into dust. And I had no one to blame but myself. Daniel was supposed to be my safe place through all this. But as the pressure mounted, his mask slipped entirely. He grew colder, more distant. He didn't want to talk about my divorce, didn't want to hear about my son, didn't want to deal with the fallout. He just wanted me when it was convenient, when he was in the mood, when it didn't interfere with his own life. One night, when I showed up at his apartment in tears after a brutal court session, he looked me in the eye and said, "Ava, this is too much." I didn't sign up for this drama. I stared at him in disbelief. Too much? You were part of this. You told me you loved me, that we'd get through it together. He shrugged, almost annoyed. That was before your husband dragged me half-naked through the street. Before my parents stopped talking to me. Before your mess ruined my career. I can't keep doing this. And just like that, he was gone. The man I had thrown away my marriage for, the man I had risked everything for, abandoned me when it got too heavy. He blocked my number, stopped showing up to work, and vanished from my life like I had never existed. The irony was cruel. I had destroyed my marriage for a man who never really wanted me beyond the excitement of the affair. Alone, jobless, and estranged from my son, I moved into a small rented apartment. The silence was unbearable. I filled the hours with mindless TV, long walks, and endless cycles of regret. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me. In the grocery store, in the park, at the gas station, people whispered. I was no longer Ava, the teacher, the wife, the mother. I was Ava, the woman who had been caught cheating, the woman in the viral videos, the disgrace. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake replaying everything in my head. The first kiss with Daniel, the thrill of sneaking around, the way Henry looked when he caught us, the sound of my son asking why I ruined everything. Regret is a poison that seeps into every corner of your mind, and I drank it every night until sleep finally claimed me. Months passed. Henry thrived. He kept the house, raised our son, continued his career without missing a beat. From the outside, he looked like the victim who had overcome betrayal, a man who rebuilt his life after being wronged. People admired him, and maybe they should have, because despite everything, Henry never stooped to begging or screaming. He let my choices destroy me, and he simply stepped out of the way. I, on the other hand, became the cautionary tale. Friends who once looked up to me avoided me. Women whispered about me at social gatherings. My own family barely answered my calls anymore. I was living proof of how quickly one bad decision can unravel an entire life. And yet, the cruelest part is that I still think about Daniel sometimes. Not because I want him back, God, no. But because I wonder how I could have been so foolish, so blinded by lust and validation, that I threw away everything for a man who was never going to stay. I traded stability for chaos, love for lust, family for loneliness. And in the end, I lost it all. Now, I write this not for sympathy, but as a warning. To the women who think they're missing out, who think the thrill of another man will fix the emptiness inside them, don't do what I did. Don't confuse lust for love. Don't let your boredom or insecurities push you into choices that will burn your life to the ground. Because when the fire dies down, you'll be left standing in the ashes alone. My name is Ava. I betrayed my husband Henry. I lost my son. I lost my career. I lost myself. And all I have left now are the regrets that play in my head every night. This is the ending of my story. The story of how I destroyed everything I had, and how there are no do-overs in life once the damage is done.